Good morning, everybody. Great to see you today on this non-snowy day so far. That's fantastic. So glad for that. But this is a big day, a huge day in the life of our church, and a day that we've been working towards for the last 6 months, a culminating moment in this series, Advancing Good and Changing Lives. And in a little while, we're going to invite you to come forward with your card. One of these are Advancing Good, Changing Lives pledge cards to put them in these boxes. It'll be towards the end of the service. We'll tell you when. And really just an opportunity for us to really grasp this moment and to say to God, like, we're available, Lord, whatever you want to do. As Jess said today, God's doing this. We don't grow anything. We just try to give our best to the Lord, and then it's in his hands. We water and he grows it. And so just a really exciting time, and we're going to get to that in a few minutes. I do want to say a couple things first. First of all, if you're new here this morning, just to let you know a little bit of what's going on, God's been growing us like crazy the last 10 years. We're a 10-year-old church. God's been growing us. We have run out of room in our second service. Last week, we had no room. We had a bunch of people in the lobby, which isn't great because it's not the greatest place to view things at this point. Parking lot was really packed. A lot of things going on. We had 30 people parking at the bank. We had people on the grass. We got somebody who got stuck on the grass, etc. Good problems. We pushed them out. It was all good. But that's what's going on. We have seen our children's ministry growing. We've seen not only our service, but where we attend together, but our service ministries to others, reaching families with our food pantry and all kinds of other things, expanding, even exploding as we seek to gather, connect, and serve each other and our world. So that's kind of the background to all of this. And what you're going to see this morning, if you're new today, is God's people stepping up in a big way to grasp that moment, to seize that moment. And so we're very glad you're here. Please don't feel an obligation to be part of this. Just observe. We hope you'll come back. And we hope at some point you'll say, wait a minute, I'd like to gather with this group in worship. I'd like to connect in meaningful relationships. I'd like to partner with others to serve. We hope that you'll want to do that with us. And so we're going to have a little bit of a family huddle for now, and I'd like to ask you to grab your card. We're just going to walk through it for a minute here. Your commitment card, everybody should have one on their seats. And if we could have the lights up all the way so people could see. I just want to go through it because we have not done, as you know, a traditional campaign. We haven't gone out and, bombarded you with money messages over the last 5 weeks. That's just not our style. If you're new, you'll hear soon. We're going to say, don't give to the offering. We're glad you're here if you're new, because we step up as God's people to serve and give out of love to support his work. And so we haven't done a traditional campaign. We didn't do print a lot of expensive materials to give out to you. We didn't go to the Hilton Hotel, if there's even one in Harrisburg, I don't know, Hilton Hotel, had a big dinner, expensive dinner. We didn't do any of that stuff. No one called you. I didn't call you. We didn't visit at your house and tell you how much some random person thinks you should give. No. None of that. We're just inviting you to be part of something big that God is doing. And so this is the commitment card here. It's a financial commitment to LifePoint Church. It's not a legally binding document. So for us here, this is something that is between you and God. It's not an obligation. In fact, your situation could be in a certain place now. It may change over time. It's a personal commitment to God. We ask for this estimate so we can thoughtfully plan for the future. We need to have this card. Some have asked, why do we need this card? And we need the card, and we need you to sign it because we need to know where we stand. We have a goal before us that we need to reach, and we need to know where we're at in terms of that target number before we put a shovel in the ground. Some of you have asked, when do we start? Well, it's up to us. We'll start when we hit that target number, and this helps us track that it's something from you, and we have the amount, and we can document that, and we have a number, and we can begin to work towards our target. So it is important that you fill this out and bring that up front soon for the purpose of planning. The Lord tells us to be a cheerful giver, to make our gifts according to our ability to give. This isn't often the verse that people use for fundraising campaigns. God loves a cheerful giver, but that has been our campaign. And because basically when God is doing something, I know for Denise and me, we want to step up into it. We're motivated to do that. We don't need people to push us or kind of twist the arm or that kind of thing. We want to do it. And so that's where we've come out with that. Make your gifts according to your ability to give. Some of you have been blessed in a big way financially, and you could give a significant gift to this project. We will need, and I'll be honest with you, we do need some big gifts in order to pull this off. We'll need some significant gifts from the church to move forward with this. Some of you have approached me, though, and have said to me that you don't have as much as you wish you did. And maybe you're a single mom, a single parent, fixed income. Some of you have said, I'm planning to give to this project, but I feel that the amount I'm giving is too small. And what I want to say to you today is that God looks at our finances a lot differently than we do. When God looks at our finances, he doesn't look at the amount we give. He looks at the percentage that we give in light of what we have. It's a very different thing altogether. It's a picture of the widow and her mite. Remember that story? Maybe if you've read through the gospel, you've come across that story that Jesus was standing outside the temple treasury one day, and all these people were bringing money to the temple treasury, which was outside, and many rich people were pouring big amounts of coins into the treasury. It was clanking and making a very big sound. And the disciples were very impressed by this, that there was so much, that these people were giving so much. And then a widow came along and she threw in 2 copper coins, 2 mites, threw them in. And Jesus said that she's the one who gave the most of all. And they're like, Jesus, obviously you're hungry, you're not thinking, there's something off, because that's obviously not true. But see, the rich people were giving more, but as a percentage of what they had, it was small. It was excess. It was leftover at the end of the month. It wasn't really that sacrificial, even though it was a larger amount. Whereas the widow gave a smaller amount, but as a percentage of what she had, it was much higher, and that's what impresses God. The sacrifice, the percentage of what we give. And so how much is not a factor. And so if you can only give little, know that could be one of the most sacrificial gifts for this whole campaign, depending on your circumstance. So give according to your ability to give. If your financial situation changes, you may increase or decrease your giving level. I'd ask you to do this, and Denise and I have done this. Take a stretch. Take a scary step and give in a scary way. To say, I'm going to be radically generous in this project to advance good and change lives. And say, God, as you prosper me, I will do this. And test him. The Bible says we can do that on financial matters like this. Test me. And God says, see if I will not open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing. So there's a real sense that God will provide. And he's really just looking not for our money, but our trust in him. And so if your situation changes over time, you make a bold commitment and things get better. Maybe you'll want to give more. You lose a job, something else happens, then by all means make an adjustment, because this is something that God would certainly understand, and it's something that makes sense to make that adjustment. So just setting all that up. On the right side here, you'll see different levels of giving and what that plays out weekly, monthly, and annually. On the other side of the card, it says, I believe this is a defining moment and I will not hold back. I prayerfully commit to step out in faith to advance good and change lives. Here you'll see a one-time cash gift that you could give, which you can record there. A commitment to give over the next 3 years, weekly, monthly, annually. Maybe there's another way that you'd like to give. And then a total 3-year commitment in terms of what you will give. This, again, helps us plan so we know where we stand. We're not going to send letters to you and say, what's going on with the pledge? We didn't do that to set it up. We're not going to do that to follow up. But this is something that we just ask you to prayerfully consider. So you can put all that there. If you could put your information on the other side of the card here. And also there's a checkbox on the bottom there. And maybe you're at the point like, wow, I got to think about this, but I can pray. Check that box, bring it up here, put it in this box towards the end of this service, because this is God's work, and we're just praying and asking him to continue to lead and to guide and to direct us. So that's really where we stand with this card. And like I said, after towards the end of this service, we'll have you come up. But the question really is, how did we get here? Like, why are we talking about this? Why is this so important? And it really is full circle back to what we talked about at the beginning. It's all about mission. It's all about mission. It's not about brick and mortar and those kinds of things, but it's about this call that God has on our lives to embrace the great commandments, to love God with all our heart and all our soul, all our mind and all our strength, to love him and love others. That love for God is not just something that is private in our own hearts and lives, but it flows out to other people, that other people should notice that we're different as a follower of Jesus. Other people should notice that we as a church, we're imperfect. I'm imperfect. We screw up, we mess up, but we get back on track and we want to do the right thing and we try to honor God in all that we do. And so as a church, we can become that kind of person that breaks into this broken world to make a difference. And it enables us to grab a brush, to grab a roller, and to begin rolling over the pain and the brokenness and the loneliness and the emptiness in this world, to be the kind of people that say with great determination and passion, who say this, that I have a firm conviction, that we have a firm conviction that we don't exist for ourselves, that we exist to serve other people. When we look at this idea of serving others, it's something we see throughout the Bible, that God has called us to passionately love others. And we saw this in various scriptures. Titus 3, 1 through 2. It says, be ready to do whatever is good, to slander no one, to be peaceable, considerate, to show true humility toward all people. Be ready, poised, like just urgently, like aware. I'm ready to go, to do good in the moment when that moment arrives. Titus 3:13, do everything you can to help Zenas the lawyer and Apollos on their way and see that they have everything they need. In other words, to resource the mission, to provide what God needs in that moment and what God wants to mobilize from us to accomplish something big for him. Titus 3:14, our people must learn to devote themselves to doing what is good in order that they may provide for daily necessities and not live unproductive lives. There's this sense here where we're to be devoted, not to religious activity, not to getting up on a Sunday morning, just going to a church building and going through the motions or that kind of thing. No, this is a lifestyle. This is a life commitment that you and I make, devoted to do good, poised and ready to make a difference so that in the end, we don't fall short and live an unproductive life. And I want to say something to you that I am so proud of our church because you are doing this. You are doing this. You are impacting lives and you don't even know it sometimes. There's so many things that God is doing up front and behind the scenes here. It's mind-blowing. And I was reminded of that this past week when I recounted the story of Ryan. Ryan was a young man who will tell you that his life has been radically altered, eternally shaped because of LifePoint Church, because of our church. Ryan and his girlfriend at the time, Alicia, were at the Meadows getting ice cream. And they were hanging out, they were doing a date night, and there were 3 college kids in front of them online. And they were online, and they were scrambling for money, because college kids are really poor, Isn't that true? They don't have any money. So they're scrambling and they're like, listen, I got $1, I got 50 cents. They're trying to find something cheap on the menu. They just want to get some ice cream. And Alicia and Ryan overheard this, and Alicia came up to them and said, hey, listen, guys, get what you want. We'll help you out. And that started an amazing conversation because they did. They got ice cream and they started talking. And after a little while, two of those guys were from Life Point Church. One was our son, Austin. The other was Tyler McFarland. And they were talking, and Austin discovered that they were new in the area and said, listen, you should come and check out Life Point Church sometime. And they talked a little bit and said, yeah, maybe, that kind of thing. And it just stopped. The conversation ended, and they all went their different ways. And in the midst of all those things, Tyler and Austin had no idea how that simple invite to church was going to radically impact Ryan's life, change the trajectory in a big, big way. You see, what Ryan didn't say that night at the Meadows was that his life was a complete wreck. He was in a total downward spiral and was even despairing of life itself. He wasn't sure he wanted to go on. And in the midst of all this, he just had all this sense that I've been a Christian years ago, but I've walked away from it. I'm backslidden. I haven't wanted anything to do with God, and he's not around, and I don't have that anymore. And he admitted, as I talked to him last week and communicated with him, he wanted nothing to do with God. He was far from God. On top of that, his family problems were just huge, huge, huge problems in his own family. He was struggling with the death of his father from cancer. His mother died of a drug overdose, and he found her dead in a bathtub. At the funeral, he found out that the woman in the bathtub that he thought was his mom wasn't actually his mom at all. It was his aunt. He didn't even know that until the funeral. She never told him. His mother actually wanted nothing to do with him. She was out of the picture. She didn't care at all. And all of this had created such anxiety in his own life and such despair that he started resorting to some really dark things. He got into drugs himself. He became a drug addict just to pop some pills and drink some stuff to cope, to deal with the grief, to cover it over. His life was spiraling downward in a way he covered up really well. Well, after all this was happening, one night, a few days after the invite Austin gave to church, Ryan found himself in his car. He was high as a kite. He was crying in despair and just ready to end it all. He's driving down Route 22 at 120 miles per hour. And when he finally slowed the car up, and he told me this story, he says, when I finally slowed the car up, I looked up and I couldn't believe what I saw. He looked up and he saw the Life Point Church sign. And he said to himself, wait a minute, is that the church that kid Austin invited me to attend? And it was in that moment he was determined that he was going to show up one Sunday. But you know how things go. Sunday comes along, and he started thinking, I don't know anybody at this place. I don't know Austin. I don't know Tyler. I don't know if they're going to be there. I would talk to them, but I don't know if they're going to be. I don't know anybody at this church. And he started having second thoughts, but there was a voice, he said, in his mind that told him some very, very firm words. And they were, go, just go. So he got in the car with his girlfriend, Alicia. They drove to the church. They came and they were welcomed. They came to that front door just with the same anxieties every one of us has when you go to a new place. And they were welcomed. And they came in and they sat in the church, and they sat in front of Lee and Joyce Gaiman. God was orchestrating things we didn't even know we were getting used. We didn't even know we were part of that plan. And in the midst of meeting and greeting, and after the service, they talked together. And in fact, Ryan and Lee hit it off. And they exchanged phone numbers. Lee even told me later, he goes, man, I was surprised at that because I'm kind of laid back and all. But God was doing something. They exchanged phone numbers. And that night, Ryan actually called Lee. And he said, I have no idea why I'm calling you. And that opened up this door to conversation. They met together. They got together. That friendship that Ryan and Lee formed was transformational for Ryan. It was something huge, huge that God used in Ryan's life. Soon, Ryan was coming to church every single week. He was coming every week. And he found himself joining a life group with Peg and Silas McFarland, who just happens to be Tyler's parents. And they joined a life group, and this group loved them and reached out to them and cared for them in a million different ways. And as a result of all these things, Ryan's life was changed. He stopped drinking, he stopped using drugs, and he gave his life to Christ. He got back on track with the Lord. And this change of direction, Lee and Joyce learned later, was just in time. It was just in time because what was happening, no one knew, but the doctors were really concerned that Ryan probably had a week or two to live because he was heading towards an OD. He was gonna go. He was gone. So God was working through all these different things. And in fact, I have a picture here. Let's see, we've got a picture of the wedding. That's their wedding, Ryan and Alicia, their life group. And I don't know, do we have another picture, or was that the only one we have? Austin and Ryan. And he'll say this, he'll say Life Point Church. And Austin and Lee and Joyce and the McFarlands and everybody in their group and Life Point Church all together through its message of hope and life transformation, do-overs, a fresh start, all these things changed his life. This is really what we're all about. That's why we're here, not to be religious people, not to go through rituals and say we go to church. We have a mission and a purpose. And what's so exciting and also challenging about this is that you and I look at our world and realize there are lots of other Ryans out there. Other people who are broken and hopeless, high as a kite, trying to cope in ways that lead them to dark alleys and further brokenness than they've ever known. And they don't know there's a way out of it. They don't know that there's an exit ramp out of this brokenness. But we know that. And we are custodians of this message of hope today. And so God calls us to this moment. A moment I believe that is absolutely huge. A moment where God is leading us to not just impact people who've come here before, but to work in even bigger ways, to reach the people you care about, you know are hurting and broken too. To continue to have empty chairs in all our services so we can invite people to find that message of hope and new life. And I think when we look at where we're at today, I think this is a very critical, key moment in the life of the church. This is an absolutely key moment that God has led us to very purposefully. This is a moment that God is wanting to use us as a launch pad to even bigger things. You know, when you read the Bible, there's often discussion about moments, key times in life that aren't always reproduced. They come and then they close. It's a window of opportunity that's there and then it's gone. I believe we're at that moment. The Bible talks in Ephesians, Paul says this, "Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil." There's two words in the Bible for time. The first is chronos. That's time that we measure with our watches and we put on our calendars and that we try to maximize with our to-do lists. It's sequential time. It's chronological time. It's measured in this sense of the flowing and the ticking of the clock. But there's another type of time in the Bible called kairos. And this isn't measured in seconds or minutes. Kairos time is measured in moments. Significant moments, opportune time. Again, windows that are open for just a fleeting moment. Divinely orchestrated moments where something big and impactful can happen. It's a moment that when it's seized, it has the power to change the course of history. Kairos moments, when they're seized, has the power to change the trajectory of someone's life. Their family tree can be different. The brokenness that sometimes we inherit, we can break that chain, and family trees can be changed when we step into and seize a kairos moment to introduce Jesus into that moment. And entire communities can be reshaped by the goodness of God when God's people step up and step into a kairos moment. That's what Paul's talking about here. It's a kairos moment. Make the most of every opportunity. The Greek is kairos, because the days are evil. In other words, God brings unique moments, and this is one of them. And he says, seize it. Don't let it pass by. This is big, and in 20 years, you're going to see how big it really, really is. And I think when we think about our lives, and I think about my life, I don't want to miss out on those kairos moments. I don't want to look back on my life 20 years from now and say, wow, God, I didn't see it. I don't want to look back on my life saying, why was I so timid? Why was I so scared? Why was I so afraid? I don't want to look back on my life and say, God, I guess I got distracted by other passions and other interests. And I don't want to look back on my life and say, man, what could have been? One of those you've got to be kidding moments. One of those, are you serious moments when God says, this is what you could have been. And we say, are you serious? I didn't see it. I wasn't willing to take the risk. When Denise and I moved here 11 years ago, that was our kairos moment. God called us to step out of a comfort zone, to leave security and enter a world that was not secure or certain at all. And we look back and say, God, thank you. Somehow you gave us the courage. We don't always come through, but at that moment, Lord, I'm so glad we did, because look what he's doing. Look at the impact he's making, but that's the past. This now is our kairos moment. This is our significant moment, and it's no accident that you're here. It's no accident that God has you sitting here because he knew you'd be here long before you did, or he knew I'd be here before I knew it. He knew that you'd be listening to his word and growing here and serving. So many of you serve others. You're changing so many people's lives. He knew you'd be part of this community. He planned it. He orchestrated it. It was his idea all along. In fact, the Bible says that God has a way of orchestrating things in strategic ways. And in Acts, he says, from one man, he made every nation of men, that they should inhabit the whole earth. And he determined the time set for them and the exact places where they should live. God did this so that men would seek him and perhaps reach out to him and find him, though he's not far from each one of us. That's God's plan. He knew exactly where you were at when you came to Life Point. He knows exactly where you're at now, and he planned for us to embrace this mission together, that some people, because of our church, would seek him and perhaps find him and ultimately know him. So as we courageously step into this moment, I want to just say, I can guarantee something to you. As you courageously step into this moment and practice radical generosity when it's hard and it's easy to backpedal and we're at the edge of the diving board saying, I don't know, maybe I should climb down. I can guarantee something to you, that there's going to be a moment down the road of immense joy. Joy awaits you. Because down the road, I don't know how long it's going to be, 3 years, 5 years, I don't know. But the day is going to happen when you're going to look back on your life and say, I was part of something bigger than myself. And all along, God has done what he promised, that he took care of my every need. He took care of my every need. What I gave was not lost. What I gave was not lost. I haven't suffered at all in my radical giving. And in fact, God has used that in a powerful way to make a difference, to transform others. And I receive this reward from God because what's given is not lost, it's invested and returned, but returned with riches that we get to keep, joy that is unending one day. And so I'm looking forward to hearing your stories. And I'm super excited because some of you are going to come up to me down the road and say, that was a hard topic, wasn't it? Yes. Thank you for doing it. Why? Because God has been faithful and he's taken my life to a new level. I'm super excited to hear your story of how you faced fear, how you were scared, how you stepped up, and how God worked powerfully. And I'm also super excited to hear the stories coming up. Stories of people just like Ryan, whose lives have been touched by Life Point Church, by our church, and transformed by Jesus. Life change that happened because people like you and people like me had the courage to step up and say, count me in. Count me in. I want to love. I want to serve. And I want to give. Let's pray.